Hi, welcome to the July weather forecast. Things have been very mixed recently. June was exceptionally dry in parts of the north, but in contrast, some southern locations were very wet. Interestingly, we haven't yet reached 30 Celsius this summer, so is that set to change as we head through the coming weeks? I'll begin by running this GFS 00Z sequence out to 10 days ahead. Initially, there are a few showers around, but also a good deal of dry weather. That changes quite quickly in the short term. The showers become heavier and more widespread. There's some real downpours around. But then, through Monday the 5th and Tuesday the 6th, this nasty looking area of low pressure is expected to push northeastwards across the UK. And that leads to the likelihood of it turning very unseasonable for a time. Persistent outbreaks of rain and also strong winds, especially in southern and central counties. I'll come back to that in a moment. The low pressure area then pulls away northeastwards and things do remain quite mixed for a while. However, by the middle third of the month, it's all change. What you can see is high pressure building strongly from the Azores northeastwards across the UK. It's turning a lot more settled if this is correct. Temperatures we could expect with that particular sequence, well, they're going to be very dependent on the extent of cloud cover and rain. Here's an example, 15 GMT on Sunday the 4th of July, around about 20, maybe 21 Celsius in parts of the UK. Remember, at this point we've got showery conditions, so there will be quite a lot of variance in maximum temperatures. I think the other thing worth noting on this particular chart is the lack of heat in much of Western Europe. You can see across France, temperatures are widely around 15 to 22 Celsius. You really have to travel a long way southwards into, in fact, the southern half of Spain to see values into the mid-30s Celsius. That feels quite different to what we've seen in a number of recent Julys. Here is the temperature anomaly chart for days 0 to 10, so it begins on Friday the 2nd of July. Reds are indicating positive anomalies, so temperatures above the 30-year average when aggregated through the period. Blues are indicating below it. What we can see across the UK is there isn't really much of an anomaly at all. I think in large part that's due to the cooler period through the middle there, perhaps offsetting some early and late warmth. But all in all, it's pretty average looking and, as I say, again, quite different to what we've seen in a number of recent years. I mentioned the risk of strong winds for the time of year. This chart shows gust wind speeds at 9 GMT on Tuesday the 6th of July, generated using data from the UK Met Office UKV model. That's the high resolution local model. And what we can see is here values of 50 or even 60 miles an hour in parts of southern and central England on Tuesday morning. I think the details for this feature still have to be firmed up, so it may turn out to be not quite as bad as it's looking at the moment, but all in all, not looking great, and I don't think it's really looking at all seasonable. So how do the deterministic models stack up against each other at 10 days ahead? Do they all support that transition to more settled weather that the GFS was showing? Here is the GFS 00Z chart at 10 days ahead, just to recap. You can see there is the high pressure has built strongly across the UK. Now, this is also the GFS model, but it's the 6Z update, so it's initiated with data 6 hours newer, and it's showing something quite a bit different. What we see here is that high pressure is building up from the southwest. Nonetheless, it's not doing it with much conviction, certainly not in comparison to the 00Z update. And we've got low pressure just here, keeping the possibility of showery conditions in much of the UK. So not such a summary transition according to this update of the GFS model. Instead of going forwards, we'll step back now 6 hours to the GFS 18Z update. So the data here was initiated 6 hours earlier than the 00Z update. And once again, we can see high pressure is building up from the Azores, but it isn't doing so as strongly. So starting to look like that 00Z update, the one I used in the animation, was really at the top end of things if if we're talking about settled and summery weather. The European model, the ECM, 10 days ahead, has the Azores high pressure building northeastwards, but once again there are hints of low pressure continuing to keep things showery, at least in the east. The Canadian model, 10 days, has high pressure building quite strongly, so this one's looking more settled generally, although I think even here there could well still be some scattered showers if it's correct, particularly in the eastern half of the UK. So how does the ensemble data look for the first half of July? Here's the European 10-day plot showing the MS profile for London. What we can see is there's a downwards trend in the short term, so cooler air filtering in. But then by about the 8th or 9th, it starts to warm up once again. It's a similar profile on the Glasgow plots. I'll not discuss the details. Moving ahead to the GEFS 16-day charts, this is the London one. On the top half, we can see the air mass profile, and I've annotated the first 10 days as fluctuating around the 30-year norm. But then, as we head into the middle third of the month, there is something of a warming trend shown there, just like there was on the ECM European ensemble. And towards the end of the 16-day period, most, not all, but most of the runs are going for warmer than the 30-year norm at the upper air level. So 1,500 metres approximately above our heads. In rainfall terms, well, there's an ongoing risk to begin with, but then from about the 9th to 10th, so that middle third again, there is a transition towards dry conditions. Nonetheless, I've used the word drier rather than dry because there are still some rain spikes appearing. In other words, some of the runs in the ensemble are still forecasting rain even later on in the period. Jumping up to Glasgow, the air mass profile again fluctuating around the 30-year average to begin with. And then as we head into the middle third of the month, there's a bigger spread developing there. There are cooler runs and warmer runs into the mix. When averaged out, they come in very close to the norm. But I think it's highlighting the possibilities of some fluctuations with cooler and warmer air masses crossing over. Probably quite a changeable Atlantic influence, or at least perhaps that's what it's showing. So in terms of rainfall, I think, which backs up what I've just said, there is an ongoing risk, but it reduces later on. We see towards the end of the period there are more rain spikes appearing there than there were on the London chart. So possibly taking those two charts into account is, I would say that it's going for a more typical northwest to southeast picture with the wettest conditions in the northwest, driest and warmest in the southeast. Here's the mean surface level pressure data table. I've picked Birmingham today as a fairly central location. It goes out 16 days ahead. Each of these columns is showing the forecast output for one time slot. So going, as I say, going out 16 days from all the runs in the ensemble. Initially, it's green, which indicates runs going for relatively low pressure, FAT 996 to 1,010 millibars. It's below the average for the time of the year. But as we head forwards, the yellows return. So there's an upwards trend in pressure. The yellows are between 1,011 to 1,025 millibars. So most of those are just a little bit above the average. But what we see is there are some oranges which are going for higher pressure, and likewise there are some greens even further ahead which are going for lower pressure. As I say, the trend there is an upwards one with some outliers at the top and bottom end of the range of outcomes. In terms of 2 metre temperatures, here's the London data table. Again, each column shows the maximums on a given day, going out to 16 days here. In the short term, there's this downwards trend. The amount of dark orange there is decreasing. The light orange is increasing. That's as the cooler air filters in with the changeable or unsettled period. But then towards the middle third of the month, there's a warming trend. Dark oranges increase, and there are some reds in there which are going for 26 to 30 Celsius. So we're seeing that support, at least for a transition to somewhat warmer weather. Jumping up to Glasgow, the pattern's very similar. Initially, temperatures are going down, but then as we head towards the middle third of the month, the amount of oranges increase there, the dark oranges reappear as well. So it's not as warm as it is in the south, but nonetheless, temperatures are going upwards. Rainfall, well, I think there's some uncertainty here. What I've done is brought up the data tables for 4 different locations. On the left, we've got London, then it's Plymouth, then it's Birmingham and Glasgow. I've ordered them from the driest to the wettest. You can see the London one is suggesting that things will be turning drier. There's an increasing amount of light grey as we move forwards. The amount of light grey on the Plymouth, Birmingham and Glasgow charts also increases, but there isn't as much appearing as there is on the London one. I think all in all, as I say, the wettest conditions here beyond into the middle third of the month look likely to be in the northwest, so Glasgow out of these particular plots. What about the second half of the month? So I'll take a look at that using the GEFS 35-day data. I think I'll also just make a point of saying that I'm not going to be showing the ECM data for this period, the European ensemble data. I have taken a look at it and it's broadly consistent. I have factored it into what I'm going to conclude here. Okay, so looking at the London air mass profile, the first half of the month I've boxed out, haven't already discussed it. What we can see through the second half of the month is the purple line is the mean, the thick black line is the 30-year norm, and so for much of the time the mean of the ensemble is a little bit above the thick black line, not always, so we've got this fluctuation. I don't think there's a big deviation from the average shown here. It all looks pretty typical. Saying that though, that may be somewhat different again to what we've seen in recent years when we've had these really, really hot periods even during mixed summers. In terms of pressure, I think again it looks fairly close to the average. There are some fluctuations going through the second half of the month. It's going up and down a little bit. All in all, that would probably suggest the possibility of rather changeable conditions at times, dry periods, but it wouldn't preclude some showers or longer spells of rain as the Atlantic maybe or areas of low pressure in general begin to have more influence. Looking at Glasgow, here I think the signal is probably for air mass temperatures to be slightly below the 30-year norm more often than they were in the south. So generally a cooler picture in the northwest. The pressure chart shows probably bigger fluctuations than the London one did through the second half of the month, but with the mean there sometimes dipping below the norm, sometimes a little bit above it. I think again, all in all, it's probably quite a changeable picture which has been shown by these charts, with the northwest being more likely to see wetter conditions, the southeast more likely to be drier and warmer. Here are the aggregated weekly air mass anomaly charts. So these are derived by calculating all the ensemble forecasts for the week and then divide them by the average, the 30-year average. You can see red shading shows a positive, so warmer air aloft than the 30-year norm. Blue shading, not much on this chart, it's a little bit down here, showing a negative anomaly. What we can see with the UK is that there's some light pinky red, so there's a weak positive anomaly. This is a week beginning the 15th of July. It's not a very significant anomaly at all, but just weakly positive with the really warm conditions a long way south and east. If we jump forward to the next week, which is beginning the 22nd of July, the anomaly is actually faded. We can see the white shading indicates actually bang on close to the average. Move further west, what we can see is there's more blue beginning to appear. So the warmth has really been pushed southwards and eastwards through this period. And finally, looking at the 29th of July, remember it's the week, so we're actually looking into the beginning of August here. You can see across the UK, it's really the white shading that dominates, and there's even a little bit of blue across the northern parts there. So possibly a little bit below the average by then, if it's correct. It's such a long way off. It's just looking at the trends. And I think what these charts have showed is that the positive anomaly through the second half of the month is quite weak. And if anything, it fades later on. So to summarize the month, week 1, heavy showers or longer spells of rain in much of the UK. During sunny spells, it'd be quite warm early on, but there is that trend towards cooler conditions. Also, there is the probability of it becoming very windy for a time in the southern half of the UK. Details still to be firmed up, but it looks like it could be very unseasonable for a time. Second week, mixed. But there is more focus on drier periods. Having said that, the risk of wetter conditions still remains. Second half of the month, confidence of course is very, very low by this point, but current guidance is pointing towards fluctuating temperatures which will be above the average more often than below it, especially in the south. The driest periods are likely to be in the south, the southeast, but even there is still a risk of rain. And as you head northwestwards, that risk increases. So there we have it. I think all in all, quite a mixed month. Maybe temperatures a little bit above average, taken across the country as a whole. Rainfall amounts quite close to the norm, I would think, but with some significant or large regional variations once again, like there were in June. Now, the question I raised at the start was, will we see 30 Celsius being recorded this month? I can't give a definitive answer, of course, to that, but the only thing I would say is, logically, I'd be very surprised if it isn't. However, the signal for very, very warm or hot conditions looks to be weaker than it has been in a number of recent years. So we may get to the end of July with 30 Celsius still having to be reached in the UK. As I said, I don't think that's the most likely outcome. I think we will get there, but I think the chances of it not being achieved this July are significantly higher than they have been for several years. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video and found it useful. If you did, please remember to hit the like and subscribe buttons below. Thanks for watching now. Bye.